Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SHR Media Network.
Get ready for truth bombs, belly laughs, and the kind of accent that turns car into a two-syllable adventure. Here's your host, Sean.
So I would fully expect, and we are preparing for, an influx of more agents, more of the very visible public theatrics of the raids, of the harassments, and you got faith leaders here. I would not put it past this administration to target midnight mass services amongst folks going to worship.
Welcome to the Media Network. It is the 19th of January, 2026. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to everyone in the chat room. You can get in the chat room, go to shmedia.com and join the live chat. Got a lot to talk about this evening, but Tampon Tim, it was not the administration that was necessarily targeting churches, was it? No. We'll get to that. We actually have a lot to get to tonight. Everything's going to be about Minnesota. Before I tear into all of the politics with Minnesota and ICE and Don Lemon and the fraud and the Somali and everything that's going on, I have a friend in Minnesota who reached out to me, and rightfully so. I'll own this a little bit, to remind me that there's a lot of good people in Minnesota who are having to deal with all of this. Some of which are the cops, who are not thrilled about their leadership. They're not thrilled about what they have to do. I know that's going to make some people mad, but it's true. They unfortunately, when you get a new boss and you're too close to retirement or you don't want to move or your family situation, a million different reasons, they are understaffed incredibly in Minneapolis. They have been since the George Floyd's riots. A lot of people leaving when they can. So there are some good cops there. I will admit that. I never want to get the impression that there isn't. It's the leadership that I have severe issue, and that's leadership with the entire state, not just the Minneapolis Police Department and that chief douchebag. It goes up to the mayor douchebag. It goes all the way up to the governor douchebag, Tampon Tim himself. The question that's been rolling around in my mind the last few days is, why did the Democrats pick Minnesota? You had ICE all over the country. Yeah, they pushed back a little bit in LA and a couple other smaller areas, but not like this. Chicago, I mean, God, we were told it was going to be like this in Chicago. Remember all the gangsters in Chicago? You better not come to Chicago. Then they did, and they did their job, and nothing was done, and rightfully so. But it asks, why Minnesota? Why did they choose that? They had to know the fraud was there. From what I'm told, and I have somebody coming on Wednesday night to explain this better, the fraud's been going on there for well over a decade, maybe even further. So they had to know putting this spotlight was going to probably draw up the fraud stuff if it wasn't for an independent journalist to do it himself and make it a mainstream issue. I've been told, and we'll talk about it Wednesday night, that the lapdog media in the Minnesota knew all of this. Everybody knew, and I didn't know this. This was explained to me tonight. Everyone knew about Tim Walz's trips to China. Everyone knew about his stolen valor stuff. Everyone knew who Tim Walz was. And he was a goofy nobody prior to running with Kamala. I mean, you think back and ask yourself legitimately, prior to the time that Tim Walz came out of his meeting with Biden and endorsed him fully, he's totally fine, he's great, blah, 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 blah. I play that in the show. Do you remember Tim Walz prior to that. He was a congressman. But do you actually remember? He's the most, if he wasn't the country's biggest boob right now, and that's, I'll show you tonight, that's a struggle to get to that position. But you wouldn't know anything about Tim fucking Walz if he did not, if Kamala didn't pick him. And if local media knew all this, and they knew about Tim Walz's terrible behavior, and they knew about the fraud, the Democrats had to have known this fraud's going on because everybody in government in Minnesota knew. They knew for years. Why would they pick Walz? And I know they didn't pick Shapiro because he was Jewish and that went over with the Palestine community like a fart in church. Church again. But why would they pick Walz instead? And they knew that, look, when they pick a running mate, they vet everything about your background. They decide whether or not you're a big enough risk or not. And they picked Tim Walz knowing all of this shit that was going on there. And it wasn't that they didn't know. We know that. So why would they pick Walz? Why would they pick Minnesota for all this? And we had the conversation tonight to the person who's coming on Wednesday. They said, it's weird that the entire Somali population showed up here. And I said, no, it's not, because what happens is you get a few people from a smaller community, and the Somali community is not an enormous community in the grand scheme of things, right? And a couple of them figure out how to game the system. And their friends are coming to America and they're like, where should we go? And they're like, come here. I know how to game the system. And they continue to game the system. And at some point we have to find out, and I'm being told that we might, who educated them to game the system? That's the question. So then you go through all that and you ask the question, why Tim Walz? He did not do what they said he was going to do, which is all of a sudden win over men. Remember that? Tim Walz is going to actually win over men, and he knows what it's like to be a real guy, and he's got a International Harvester truck, and he's going to turn around and change the starter on it and then tell you how to file the points. Okay. It seems to me that they knew for some reason that Walz was a problem. And either they needed all this to come out now before the next election. It's too convenient is what I'm saying. You have a guy with that much fucking trouble, and he wasn't worth the gain. And I still think Walz hurt them tremendously. BZ says that he would deliver the Muslim vote, but I don't think that's true. I think the majority were going to vote Democrat anyhow, even though you had many that weren't because of the trans and the gay rights issue that the left was jamming down their throat. But even at that, it's still kind of a non-factor. Minnesota was going to go for Dems most likely anyhow at that point. At least that was the theory. So you gotta really look at the totality of all of that. And then it brings you to today. How do you get a Walz? How do you get a government in Minnesota that is completely ineffective? They vote a guy like Ellison, and we're going to talk later about what a moron Ellison is. He's either a moron or he is just an unbelievable actor. It's one of the two. It could be both. I don't know. I don't know the man. But it spreads down through the AG's office. Then you have an idiot like Frey, who's been around for a long time, who's the guy who knelt during the George Floyd riots, right? It makes you wonder why Minnesota has become ground zero for the Insurrection Act getting passed or close to it, for the amount of outrage and fury that's going on, for the amount of people that they're bussing in and all the money that they're spending, and they are spending it. We all know a lot of the lead agitating protesters are paid. Follow the money. It's not hard. But you get to this point where you have to ask why. And I don't know the overall answer. I'll be the first to admit it. I don't fucking know. I don't know why they set this up. They knew at some point, the fraud was going to come to a head. And the only thing that I'm legitimately wondering right now, and I've been doing this for a while, did they want to get rid of this going into the midterms and before the next election? Did they want it to all hit, get done, get out of the way? They knew it was going to be, and they can turn around and entirely use this to get their little sound bites and their sound clips before 2028. Jacob Frey is obviously gunning for higher offices. And from what I was told, and I could be wrong, and the information could be wrong, what I was told is nobody wants to take over for Walz. That's how bad it is. Yeah, Amy Klobuchar, her name's getting thrown around. It was pointed out tonight that she's going to be like number 1 or 2 in the Senate here shortly. Durbin's retiring, and the left is making a heavy move to get rid of Schumer, the progressive left in New York. If that happens, she's number 1 in the Senate. That's a lot of power to walk away from. But if she has aspirations for a higher office, most people in that situation will take the executive position of governor to bolster their resume. But whoever's walking in is walking into a complete shit show. We have the fraud. I'll talk about that in the third part, the updates on that. You have obviously all the illegal aspects of it, the illegal immigrants and what services they've been provided. You have a state government that is clearly just out of control of what's going on in their own state. So whoever that governor is has to walk in and either own that or make it go away. And I just don't know how you can do that on either side and be successful after the fact. Walz is done. He's impotent when it comes to government. I don't know about his personal life. He might be impotent there too. That's not for me to judge. That's not for you to judge. That's but I'm just trying to get caught up in chat room. There's a whole bunch of new chatters tonight. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe. To the ones who are actually giving productive statements in the chat, even if you disagree with me, I do appreciate you. I want you to be here making intelligent arguments. Said before, I'm not right about everything, but I've been around for a while and I've been doing this for a while. So Ryan H 2691, conservatives think they know what Democrats are thinking. I'm claiming not to. That's literally, I can tell you some of their goals because this is the third iteration of make a straw man the bad guy and blame them for all of life's problems in an area, right? It went all the way back to beyond Black Lives Matter. It was the Occupy Wall Street. It was the first time they tried that on a massive level, and it worked. They saw how many people they could get to sit out in the rain for weeks at a time and hate Bank of America while they still went to Bank of America before they went to Costco or Starbucks rather and got on their phones. And then we saw that with BLM. They painted the cops as always the bad guys. No matter what happens, they're always the bad guys because it's a nameless, faceless organization. And you can target everybody by saying, if you're any one of these groups except for a white male, you're targeted and you should be outraged and anger. And that's exactly what they did. They got that fervor going. So we had the Summer of Love. We had the BLM riots. We had all that stuff. And they still kick it up every once and again. And now they do it again for ICE. So I don't necessarily know what all of their plans are, but a lot of these tactics we've seen before. And we'll see it again. It's not over. Look, an election's right around the corner. When we hit the closer we get to the midterms, and I know somebody in chat said this, I apologize for not being able to remember who said it exactly. The closer we get to elections, these sort of things always fire up. Somebody made a good point about Texas and Florida having a larger immigration population, and that could be true. I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I don't know. You have both states are actively working with the federal government. Both states, for the most part, if they have an illegal in custody, they call ICE before they're released. Minnesota's not doing that. So you have to leverage what you have. You have the strength in having a state that actually follows the law and follows the rules, right? So why would you flood that state with ICE agents when you have it in a cooperation with local law enforcement? No, you have to go to the states that they're not cooperating. Who was it that committed unconstitutional illegal war crime? What? Ryan, I would love to see you. We've talked about that in other shows. I know, like, I'm trying to talk about what's going on in Minnesota, and you're taking the yeah, but Trump. Why won't you want to talk about what's Minnesota? And show me how all that's a war crime. Show me how any of that happens, and prove it other than just, and if you say the Hague or international law, which every fucking country breaks, and it's all just there for virtue signaling, then we're not having a conversation because you're not being real. Sorry, I got sidetracked a little bit. It happens on this show. But now you have to look at what the end, like I said, they had to know this was coming. They had to know this fraud was going to get leaked out eventually. They had to know Walz was leaving. They had to know all of this, the amount of illegals were in there. And they still didn't get out ahead of anything. And they're letting it all play out. And they're bussing people in because, as I said, the leaders on the left do not seem to care if one of their people gets hurt in an incident or dies in an incident, because they do exactly what they're doing now. They're fundraising off the death. I wrote a whole article on shrmedia.com, how we've seen this over and over again. They fundraise off the deaths and claim to change when they take power. Nothing ever does. That's just the Democrats' MO. And I go even further. You've no argument of not supporting a traitor. Okay. I'll go even further, Ryan. I'll play this out here. Look, the Democrats are the fucking insurgents in this country. Okay. The founders, the Constitution, the right actually wants to maintain that. We want to maintain our borders. We want to maintain our country. That doesn't mean we don't want illegals. We just want them. We want immigrants the right ways. We don't want illegal immigrants. We want real immigrants, the ones who want to be here, the ones who work their ass off, right? The ones who make this country better and actually embrace this country. And we have the rule of law on our side. We have the Constitution on our side, and we're trying to hold on to that. Those who are trying to disrupt it, to destroy it, to shred the Constitution, to downplay what the founders set up, to ruin this country because they believe in no borders, open borders, all the immigrants we can, everyone's got the money. You're the insurrectionist. You are the one who is the problem. Like it or not, we have history and the law on our side. Okay? That's what it comes down to. I gotta take a break. Come back. I didn't touch anything that I wanted to touch there. However, we're going to turn around and start talking about the Don Lemon incident, because holy shit, is that a new level of insane. Be right back right here on the SHR Media Network. Please like and subscribe.
Welcome to River of Common Sense, where we cut through the noise of news and politics with a sharp wit and clear discussion. Tune in every Monday and Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time for a refreshing dose of reality as we fearlessly tackle the tough topics with no nonsense, just pure common sense. Visit shrmedia.com to discover where you can catch River of Common Sense in action. He's here to amplify your inner logic. He may not always be polite, he may not always be refined, But one thing's for sure, he always tells it like it is.
Come listen to BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon Radio Show. Live on select and exclusive Tuesday and Thursday nights at 11 p.m. Eastern, 10 p.m. Central, and 8 p.m. Pacific on the SHR Media Rumble channel, SHR Media YouTube channel, X, Twitch, Spreaker, and wherever great conservative podcasts are found. BZ, your conservative Sherpa, guides you through the maelstrom of Democrat, leftist, and globalist lies, chaos, deceit, and betrayal. Raised as a free-range child with dirt, stains, mud, and freedom, BZ broadcasts from North Idaho, comfortably surrounded by actual normal people. Jump into our plush, sumptuous, palatial, and resplendent chat room on rumble.com. Click on live chat to join. Now, with 37% more umbrage and 19% more bulbosity than previous shows, featuring delicious Liberty additives for the best in late-night conservatarian talk radio. BZ reminds you that with great beard comes great responsibility. No chinchillas were harmed, embarrassed, fat-shamed, or the focus of any sarcasm whatsoever in the making of this ad.
Welcome back to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHI Media Network. I was corrected. Somebody sent me a DM that I was saying Mayor Frey's name wrong. And I used Frey on purpose. I know it's pronounced Fry. I use Frey as in he's frayed. Up above me, you see two different men. The man on the left is trying to justify what he did so he is not federally prosecuted. The man on the right is the man that is getting the man on the left federally prosecuted.
So that is what I could say. I turned our camera off of them because they're giving some critical information here. But
so he's conspiring with them. Now, I know a lot of you saw the story here. I already know you know that Don Lemon went to church yesterday. He was invited. Okay. This is him at the whatever you want to call it. It wasn't a protest because they stormed the church. The storming, if you will. And he's sitting here hiding what they're about to do because they're giving away tactical information. But watch how this changes from I'm a journalist on the ground to I picked a side already. Hold on a second and just watch.
There we go. Everybody's ready to go. Let's go. Okay. Thank you guys thanks for allowing me to be here. Thank you guys.
Okay.
How are you?
Good
to see you. We're on. We're not.
How many times have you in your life see a reporter kissing their source? Now we all know that Don Lemon is not in any way, shape, or form an independent journalist. We all know that Don Lemon is absolutely jaded to the left. We've seen everything that he said since he's left CNN. He somehow got worse since he's left CNN, which is amazing. And then this is them entering the church. Don Lemon's there, being Don Lemon. By the way, he said at one point they were invited. The woman who's in charge of this, they were invited. Because at one point, while she's up front screaming, she says something to the pastor about what type of church or whatever and immigrants. And he was like, well, everybody's welcome here. And she's using that as saying that she had permission. Over.
Renee Good! Renee Good! Renee Good!
It's the BLM rally. Now, they were not invited to this church. They were not necessarily unwelcome at this church. Hey, Orty's in the chat room. Welcome, Orty. Rick's in the chat room. I should say hi to the chatters really quick. I know BZ's in there. I know O2's in there. He's our new moderator. Congrats, O2. Listening Post is in there. Thank you so much for being here, Listening Post. I know, let's see, Steve was in there. Chris was in there. I've seen a whole bunch of people. Ryan, I was arguing with. I know Phantom's there. I know Reaver's there. Thank you all for being here. And you can look, you can jump into the chat all you want. There's plenty of people in the chat, shrmedia.com. Join the live chat. If you agree with anything I say, please like and subscribe. If you don't agree with anything I say, subscribe anyhow and come back and have the conversation. I'm totally cool with that. So they walk into this church, they storm themselves in, they interrupt a service that was in session. Don Lemon's there, and Don Lemon is, as you saw, was entirely involved in the planning. He knew what was going to happen. He's not there as a reporter, and Don Lemon's trying to repackage himself this week as like an Andy Ngo or Julio Rosas, one of those man on the streets guys who started independent journalism with his camera and he built everything up on his own. Then he finally got respect, right? So then he got acknowledgement, respect, and they grew. No. Don Lemon, his career is in a meteoric fall. Okay, he was once a host of a primetime show on CNN, and now he is forcing his little microphone into the faces of pastors at a church that was in the middle of mass.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
Okay, but listen, we live in there's a constitution and the First Amendment to.
No, by the way, and Don Lemon knows this. Don Lemon knows this. He knows that's not what the First Amendment means. He knows that there's First Amendment protections for private property. He knows all of this. But he's trying to strong arm him verbally and intimidate him by throwing out First Amendment rights. This is a tactic that many use.
Freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me.
We're here to worship Jesus. Yes. That's why we're here.
Look at the pastor kind of pulling back as Don Lemon gets even closer and closer to him. It's not even, I mean, it is asshole behavior. It is entirely fucking asshole behavior. But this goes beyond that. He's trying to intimidate him. And he's just, I mean, no personal fucking space.
Okay, that's why we're here. Okay. That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding
we're about
and love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
So we're to that point, and you're like, holy shit, what an absolute shit show this is. And it is a shit show. It is a just scumbag thing to do, to walk into a service. And the reason that they're there, so they say, is one of the assistant pastors allegedly works for ICE. That's why they're there, right? That's their claim. And then they go in and do this. And this is indefensible, by the way. You're going to see some people try to defend it. It's not. So they finish inside, and that's not good enough for Don Lemon because he's got to be a douchebag as much as humanly possible. So then he goes outside, and the people that are leaving, he decides he wants to videotape. Just
Watch this guy here. Look, he's hugging his kid. And you know, I've imagined it's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here. But again,
you were involved with the trauma, so it's okay to traumatize young people and people who aren't at all involved, as long as it gets your way.
And careful, it's very slippery right here. Yeah. It's uncomfortable and traumatic for the people here, but that's what really, careful, please, really slippery. Not kidding. That's what protesting is about. And so
it's not about that. Protesting is not about traumatizing kids. And protesting is certainly not about making people uncomfortable. Protesting is to let the government hear your voice. It's not to intimidate people who aren't involved or don't want to be involved. That is an unbelievable misinterpretation of what protests are supposed to be about. Oh, there it is. There it is. The first January 6th comment of the night. Absolutely couldn't wait for it. This isn't a federal building, dipshit. It's a private church. These people have nothing to do with what's going on. And nobody really even cares about January 6th. It's hysterical to me. So they go through all of this, and Don's outside, and then all of a sudden, Assistant Attorney General. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I have one more clip of Don after the fact. This just shows you how just
there and,
virtuous he thinks he is. It's amazing to me.
You heard what some of the folks said in there, that this is, they shouldn't be there and, they shouldn't be uncomfortable and this is our house and whatever. That's what protesting is about, is to make people uncomfortable. You may not like it, but, I mean, if they went into a church,
It's justifying just rude, crude, and shit-ass behavior is all he's trying to do there. So all of that happens. Assistant Attorney General Hamid Dillon comes out and says, oh, wait a second. This is a violation of the FACE Act. You can't conspire to go in and interrupt churches. We actually have rules against that. The FACE Act, which passed in 1994, makes it a crime to use force, threats of force, or physical obstruction to interfere with people who are providing and receiving reproductive health services. While often associated with abortion clinics, the law actually has a broader scope. Interference of health services, interference with freedom of religion, use of force or threats to interfere with someone exercising their First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of worship. Okay, that's what the law says. That's exactly what Don Lemon did. And once this came out, Don Lemon got himself into scramble. Oh shit, I don't want to be here anymore. And he starts going on the defense. First, he comes out with this little interview where he's trying to make it okay at what he did.
And there's a certain degree of entitlement. I think people who are, in the religious groups like that, it's not the type of Christianity that I practice, but I think that they're entitled, and that entitlement comes from a supremacy.
So because they want to go to church and not have a group of assholes interrupt them, that's white supremacy. By the way, I know he said supremacy. We know what he meant. It's Don Lemon. By the way, there are many people of many different ethnic backgrounds in that church. So that's his first step. It's it's okay because they're supremacists, and hopefully that leaves it alone. And then he starts going even further back, and he starts now trying to explain why what he did was entirely justified. And he goes on, where is it? Sorry, I got the clip here somewhere. I'll get to it. I have a lot of clips. But he starts talking. I forget. He was doing an interview with somebody. I'm looking for it. But essentially he was saying, oh, these MAGA people are blowing this out of proportion, and it's not that big of a deal. And I don't even know her name. Hamid Dillon. It's like, dude, you cover politics. You know who the government is. Stop acting like you don't know who Hamid Dillon is. You absolutely do, especially if you're on your way to violate somebody's civil rights, which you did with that church act. So, yeah, you have a pretty good idea. And he was, again, when he turns around and he says, oh, I was just a reporter. I was just there. I wasn't involved. Remember this, he brought them coffee, just in case you were wondering. But I digress. So then Hamid Dillon sends out a post. He essentially says, hey, we're investigating this for the FACE Act, as this is absolutely 18 USC 248, and it's a huge violation. And now Don Lemon has to circle the wagons. So he jumps on and he invites D.L. Hughley and Keith Ellison. Now, Keith Ellison is the guy who's got a lot in his history. But just recently, there was the tape released where he was telling the Somali community that he would block any fraud investigations, and then the next day got a shitload of donations. So that's who they bring him in. And he's the attorney general. He's supposed to be a lawyer, right? He's supposed to be a lawyer. And instead of making the argument that a lawyer would make of, well, the intent of that law was this, and even though this is underneath it, we don't prosecute it often, blah, 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 blah. No. This is exactly what Keith Ellison says. Just watch this whole clip with Don Lemon and Ellison.
And the FACE Act, by the way, is designed to protect the rights of people seeking their reproductive rights to be protected, and so that people, for a religious reason, cannot just use religion to break into women's reproductive health centers.
Wrong. And I'll just walk with this theory for a second. If he wants to have the theory, that's not what this law was intended for, then go back and look at 1947, the Supreme Court decision on separation of church and state. And if you know what the predicating case was, then you'll understand it had nothing to do with religion and prayer in church. It had nothing to do whether, and look, I'm not even overly religious. I say that all the time. Out of the group of us on the network, I'm probably one of the least religious. I never talk about religion on here unless I'm forced to. It's my own personal thing. However, when you start trying to sidestep laws and everything, and you have a case like this where I have to talk about it, you're going to get the full send on it. 1947, the separation of church and state, the Supreme Court justice who wrote the decision, his last name was Black, which is ironic because he was a former KKK member. At the time, he did not like Catholics. And the whole reason the case was brought up is that taxpayer monies were be given to Catholic families and schools to provide transportation. They filed a lawsuit. He wrote the dissent, or he wrote the decision. Okay. It was never about whether or not you could pray in church. The founders absolutely did not address this. All of their talk, if you can go to shrmedia.com, you can look at the Federalist, you can look at our founding documents. Okay. The founders didn't say anything about separation of church and state, except for the state, the country shall not pick a religion for the entire nation. Cool. And when Jefferson made his comment about the wall between government and religion, if you read his writings, it had everything to do with keeping government out of the church. It had nothing to do with whether or not the church or people could pray in church or bring government, church into government. So that's the whole separation of church and state argument that gets made all the time. And it's baloney. It's bunk. It's not what it is. And Black's decision that he made in the Supreme Court in 47, he cited Jefferson, but nobody ever looked at the context back then. But I digress. Let's continue.
Right? So how they are stretching either of these laws to apply to people who protested in a church over the behavior or the perceived behavior of a religious leader is beyond me. And the FACE Act, by the way,
the simple fact of the matter is he now has a quote unquote state attorney general who is unbelievable idiot when it comes to the law. You look at some of the things. I had another clip of something that he said that was absolutely stupid this week. He's not an intelligent man. He just happens to get elected a lot. He's like Walz and Frey. Sorry, I'll say it properly so I don't get yelled at. This is not going to bode well for Don Lemon. I think he's going to get prosecuted. I really do. And now, if he just waited outside, if he just hung outside, recorded them going in, recorded them going out, and took a completely media journalistic approach of, hey, I got a tip. I'm just watching from the outside. I'm not going to sit here and fuck anything up. I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't necessarily disagree with it. I'm just bringing you the information. I want you to apply to decide what's going on. Most people right there would have went, okay. All right. I mean, you're still Don Lemon, but whatever. But he didn't. He was there for the meeting ahead of time. He brought them coffee. He walked with them in. He got his microphone in the pastor's face. He's talking about and justifying what the quote unquote protesters did and how it's okay. That's not journalism. That's advocacy. That's entirely different. And that's exactly what Don Lemon Doing this shows you exactly what mainstream media has been doing for the Democrats for years. I got to take a break. Please do me a favor, like and subscribe. I don't care if you don't like me. I don't care if you disagree with me. Subscribe so you can get notified and you can come back and argue, but I know you like me because you're still hanging around.
Ever dream of escaping the daily grind? At Escapist Travel and Tours, we make those dreams your reality. From breathtaking adventures to cultural immersions, we offer escapes tailored just for you. Let us take you to places where every moment feels like a new chapter in your life's adventure. Visit www.escapist.travel or call us today at 1-855-885-81776. Your escape awaits.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy? No, seriously, I'm just kidding. Hi, my name's Rick Robinson. I am the general manager of KLRNradio.com. We are probably the largest independent podcast network that you've never heard of. We have a little bit of everything, and by that, what I mean to tell you is we have news, pop culture, special events, conspiratainment, true crime, mental health shows, drama productions, and pretty much everything in between. So if you're looking for a new podcast home to grab a little bit of everything that you love all in one place, come check us out. You can find us on X under @KLRNradio. You can find us on our Rumble and our YouTube channels under the same names. You can also find us at KLRNradio.com and pretty much every podcast catcher known to man. So again, feel free to come check us out anytime you like at KLRNradio.
Are you looking for a way to boldly express your faith and love for your country? Then check out Seven Armors, the premier apparel company for patriotic men of God, where faith meets freedom in style. Our t-shirts are more than just clothing, they're statements. Bold, stylish, and meaningful. From timeless messages to modern designs, we've got something for every patriotic man of God. Wear your beliefs proudly with Seven Armors gear. Don't miss the chance to wear your faith and freedom on your sleeve. Visit 7armors.com today and join the movement. That's the number 7armors.com.
Conservative media done right. You're listening to the SA.
Oh, man. Welcome back to the Edge of Liberty right here on the SHR Media Network. Please like and subscribe or he will go back to full screen mode. That's actually my favorite comment of the night. You don't want this in full screen. You wouldn't believe how many filters I have on and how much Vaseline I have to put on that camera. Thank you so much for hanging out with us the last 17 minutes. Last 17 minutes. Appreciate you guys being here, especially to all the newcomers. Thank you so much. Thank you to the moderators who are hopefully doing a good job moderating. I can't tell from where I sit, but I'm sure I'll get the report after the fact. So we're sticking it with Minnesota. It's so funny because I know I say things to be funny and then people take it the wrong way. The person who I said, quote unquote, yelled at me, which they did not yell. They were just making sure I knew because they wanted to make sure I wasn't saying anything incorrectly accidentally. It was very intentional. They texted me back, said, I wasn't yelling. No, I know you weren't yelling. You were just being nice. And I'm just an asshole and joking around because that's what I do. So let's get caught up on the fraud because that's the other story. It's just the camera, Rick. I only put it on the camera, nothing else. I'm not slathered in it from head to toe right now under this shirt. So just stop thinking about it and you'll be fine. The fraud's the big story that is getting pushed by the wayside with the ICE riots. Could be a reason why the ICE riots are happening, right? It could very well be, let's make the ICE riots a story so people ignore the fraud. But the fraud is still a major portion of the problems with Minnesota. As of mid-January, federal government has deployed over 2,000 DHS agents under Metro Surge to crack down on the industrial scale fraud. 2,000 just for the fraud. You don't deploy that many unless they all have work to do. Minnesota state officials, including AG Ellison, have filed lawsuits claiming the operation is unconstitutional and retaliatory. Why? Like, I look, and by the way, the U.S. government has said, hey, a lot of states, if you guys have very, very fraudulent activity going on inside your state, then in order to get the funding federally for those programs, you're going to have to take some extra steps to prove that you're not drowning in fraud and that all of these programs aren't out of control, as we see in Minnesota, as we see probably in California. That one's coming soon, and maybe some other places. And people were freaking out about that. Oh, how can he add? You're going to add stipulations? Yeah. Before we just throw money at you, before we just give away the house, we'd ask some questions. If you were in charge of the bank and you had one loan officer, and that one loan officer was just giving away bad loan after bad loan after bad loan, aren't you eventually going to have a conversation? Aren't you eventually going to turn around and say, maybe we shouldn't be doing that? Right? It's the same thing. You have to put in, I said Wednesday night, it was like all the checks and balances were ripped out of these programs, and you have to rein them back in. And if you're a taxpayer in America, you should want this to be reined in. That doesn't mean people don't get help and aren't deserving of help. But we have to make sure that the money's only going to the people that actually need it, right? That's how this works. That's how it's supposed to work. When we're $38.5 trillion in debt, or it's higher now, I'm sure 04AMT is going to correct me really quick. When we're that far into debt, you can't just keep spending. It's the idea of like when you were younger, like, I can't be out of money. I still have checks. The checks connect to something. On January 14th, A.G. Ellison charged Mohammed. And this is the other thing. All of a sudden, they're going to start charging people for fraud. They ignored it for years, as I said at the beginning of the show. They knew this was going on for years. But now all of a sudden, the state's going to go, oh, we're going to do something about it. Newsom's trying to do that in California, too. On January 14th, 2026, A.G. Ellison charged Mohammed Omar Exeed with stealing more than $3.2 million from Medicaid. He is accused of billing for services while clients were in jail and hospitalized. On January 6th, the federal government notified Governor Walz that the state was incredibly out of compliance, or substantially, I believe is the word they used, and they froze 14 programs. On the 9th of January, Scott Bessent, the U.S. Treasury Secretary, announced aggressive new measures. Geographic targeting order. Banks in Hennepin and Ramsey counties are now required to report international transfers of more than $3,000. They're trying to get the money before it leaves the country, as we saw with the pallet of money that flew out on a plane. They've ordered FinCEN investigations, and the IRS task force is investigating the misuse of 501c3s, which are tax exempt. The Feeding of Our Futures, the 2022 case, started with the investigation, still remains active. As of 2026, more than 50 of the 78 defendants have pled guilty or have been convicted. Federal officials revised their estimates of money stolen to $350 million. So you have a state that is completely out of control with how it's giving its money away. And the fraud became the story. We all know that. We all know that's how Minnesota really got on the map before the ICE budget started. The ICE raids. Sorry. The last couple minutes is always a little dicey on the show. Everyone who's been here for a while knows that. And now the fraud has fallen completely by the wayside as far as the reporting. And that's problematic because the American people need to see stuff like this so they know where the tax dollars are going. Trump gives trillions away in tax cuts. Well, how many trillions, Chad? I know, Chad, I'm about to answer as somebody in chat room that I know is probably not even there anymore. Trump gives trillions away in tax cuts. How much have we made in the tariffs? And he proposed a 50% increase on the defense budget. Okay. That's normal. Like, that's a budgetary thing. Price of everything's gone up. That's the way it goes. But the tax cuts for middle income people is not a bad thing if you understand how the economy works, jackass. But to get back to the fraud, you look at the totality of this fraud, and you look at how many people have already look, if 50 out of 78 people are either pleading guilty or being found guilty, there's a reason. And they're not the only ones. As I said before, fraud investigations are brutal. They take a long time. I've been involved with several. They're just They'll make you want to pull your hair out. The people who are good at them are great at them. The people who aren't good at them are terrible at them. So if you're able to pull this feeding our futures fraud and you're getting 50 people convicted, that means the evidence was so glaring that it wasn't even funny. So it's a story that you need to follow. If you care about where your tax dollars go, you need to follow. And honestly, if you care about right or wrong, you need to follow at the end of the day. Lastly, I want to talk about, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but I do want to talk about the Minnesota in general. And I'm not an expert, surely, on Minnesota. Everyone knows about Minnesota, St. Paul. People don't realize that a large part of Minnesota is completely separated from the Metroplex. And there's a ton of people who just want this to go away. And the state, from what I'm told, again, they knew all this was happening. But they just want this to be done with because the whole state's interrupted by this. Even the normal farmer who's out working in the field. And it's this sort of governance in the state has had a lot of farmers leave and go to other places that can, or a lot of people that leave that can. But there's also a lot of farmers who can't leave because they don't have the capital leave. So they have to stay in a state with an insane tax setup, with all of this money going to people who don't necessarily deserve it, and still try to make inroads. And that's really difficult. And I feel for them. I feel for the regular people who come in and just trying to do the job every day and just trying to make their family happy and go to church on Sunday. Like I said, I don't go to church, but others can. You know, they should be allowed to. They are constitutionally allowed to. They have that right to go to church and not be interrupted and not be absolutely attacked. And it's a sad state of affairs that we've got to this point in this country. We knew, and I know I'm a broken record, we knew under Biden what this was going to lead to. We knew as soon as the borders opened, we knew what this was going to lead to. We knew flooding the country with 10, 15, maybe more by some estimates, million undocumented people was not only a national security risk, but it would destroy our infrastructure. It would open up all of this as a potential to fraud, obviously. What it weighs on our public services, what it weighs on the taxpayer in general, on our schools, all of that. We knew this was going to happen. So someone in the chat room was way before that. No. Understand. I know it was way before that. Been doing this a long time, pal. I agree. It was way before that. The Democrats have always wanted to flood the country with people from the outside in order to redistrict and get more seats. Because by and large, as we saw in Somalis in Minneapolis, and you see in a lot of other cities, they have a tendency to go where people from their country is from because that's how they get ahead. So they move to these bigger cities and they increase the population. And if you don't know how our census is done, they don't count who's legal and who's not legal. It's just who's living in that community, who's living in that house, who's living in that neighborhood. They just count heads. They don't ask for ID. And then what happens is everything gets redistricted and those cities get more power and more seats and more power. And that's what the Democrats wanted. That was their way to try to jack with Congress. They already got away with it with the 17th Amendment and the direct election for senators. They already jacked it up. I've talked about this a million times. Repeal the 17th. I'd do it tomorrow. Because the 17th Amendment changed from when state legislators would pick their senators to direct election from the people. And if you're one of those people like, oh, it's a great thing. No, it's not. It ruins state representation on a federal level. If it was the way it's supposed to be, the Democrats would never have the Senate again. That's just the way the country is. Look at the breakdown. I'm not making this up. That's just how it is. And now we're at this place where we have to try to undo it. And I know everyone, Trump, you hate trying to. America voted for this. And there are polls coming out that are saying America's still supporting it. The optics may be tough. Yeah, the optics can be tough at times. But you can't make change through optics. You have to actually make change. And look, if a lot of these people put as much effort into making their own country better than they are into, say, I don't know, fraud in Minneapolis, then maybe these countries wouldn't need to have mass migrations out. Maybe some would stay. Maybe the countries would start to prosper. And if the country's too far gone, I'm sorry. But the reality of the situation is we are a nation of laws. Congress passed our immigration laws. Absolutely passed our immigration laws. Congress approved ICE. That's how it ended up on the president's desk, and that's how it got signed back in, was it 1992, 1990? Obama, Clinton. I had a video from Clinton tonight I was going to play. I don't know if I have time right now. Oh, yeah. Here we go.
Are rightly disturbed by the law.
Watch this one. It's not just me saying it.
All Americans, not only in the states most heavily affected, but in every place in this country, are rightly disturbed by the large numbers of illegal aliens entering our country. The jobs they hold might otherwise be held by citizens or legal immigrants. The public service they use impose burdens on our taxpayers.
Everything I just said, President Clinton said. And this video is obviously edited for comedy. I'm not going to play the whole thing. But I wanted the clip of Clinton saying it. Obama said very much the same thing. Go look it up. Hillary Clinton said the same thing. Look it up. You have to realize that being anti-illegal immigrant is not the same as being anti-immigrant. And if you believe that, you've been emotionally brainwashed. You've been emotionally hijacked. You've allowed others to play your emotions. SHRmedia.com, I wrote an article about this week, about how academia and the hippies and the communists absolutely went out of their way to emotionally disrupt, emotionally weaken, and brainwash the youth. And it wasn't necessarily all in one step. It took a long time. But instead of teaching reading, writing, arithmetic, and books in schools, and what they actually need to know, they started teaching social justice and emotions and all this stuff that schools have no right teaching their children. That comes from home. But that became their goal, their focus. That's why you got Common Core. That's why things got dumbed down in this country. They don't want critical thinking. They don't want you to read the Articles of Confederation. They don't want you to read the Constitution, understand how the Supreme Court works, or understand our immigration laws. They lie to you straight away. Adam Kinzinger. It's the whole reason I wrote a report on ICE a couple weeks ago. Lied about what ICE can and can't do. ICE can't do traffic stops. No, they can. They absolutely can. They can't. They're not enforcing city traffic laws. But if they have a federal reason to stop that vehicle, they can do traffic stops. They continue to lie to you. And as I said earlier, we're on the side where we're trying to maintain this country and the founding and the Constitution and what the framers had in mind, however imperfect it may be, still the best one out there. We're trying to keep the country at what it is. The ones who are trying to rip it apart, you're the insurrectionists. Sorry. That's going to be it for me tonight. But hey, I'll be back Wednesday, 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Do me a favor. Please do me a favor. Check out some other shows in the SHI Media Network every Monday and Friday at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 on the East Coast. You have the Reaver of Common Sense with Jersey Joe. Tuesday and Thursdays, 9 Pacific, noon on the East Coast. You have Mission Ready Men with my buddy Big E. Tuesday and Thursday nights. You have the Bulbous One BZ's Berserk Bobcat Saloon at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 on the East Coast. Right here, the same time frame that I'm in. Please like and subscribe. I see we had a whole bunch of new listeners. I appreciate you, even the ones I don't agree with. I still appreciate you sticking around, having the conversation. Hey, sometimes conversation is the best things we can have. I'll see you Wednesday, and thank you to KLRN for simulcasting, and thank you to our moderators. I know you guys are a lot busier now. Sorry about that. I'll buy you a cup of coffee someday. I'll see you Wednesday.
Ever dream of escaping the daily grind? At Escapist Travel and Tours, we make those dreams your reality. From breathtaking adventures to cultural immersions, we offer escapes tailored just for you. Let us take you to places where every moment feels like a new chapter in your life's adventure. Visit www.escapist.travel or call us today at 1-855-885-81776. Your escape awaits.
Hello, friends. Do you have a moment so that we may discuss our Lord and Savior Minarchy?